So, welcome to the Math Talks, where we go beyond formulas and grades and dive into what truly matters in your child's learning journey. I'm Dr. Garima, math educator, mother, and co founder of Uncover Math Genius. In this podcast, I speak with leading thinkers, educators, and change makers from around the world to explore how we can raise confident problem solvers, not just high scorers. Whether you're a parent, teacher, or just curious about how children learn, you're in the right place. Let's reimagine math and education for the world our children are stepping into. So, today I'm speaking with someone whose work I deeply admire, someone who brings a rare blend of expertise, creativity, and heart into math education. Nadia Abdelal is a math education specialist with over 20 years of experience across classrooms, national organizations, and global education communities. She has taught in secondary schools, led numerous initiatives, contributed to national level math resources, and co founded the pioneering AMSI Maths Talk podcast. She has presented at major conferences and has authored widely used math resources, but what I love most about Nadia is the way she sees math, not as a subject to survive, but as a language of curiosity, creativity, and thinking. And this totally resonates with me too. Her work blends conceptual clarity with art, visuals, exploration, and a deep respect for how children naturally learn. Through her consulting, her organization, EM Maths, and her ongoing work in curriculum design and evidence based teaching, she supports both teachers and families to make math joyful, meaningful, and accessible. Nadia, I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. Garima. I'm really excited to be here and speaking with you today.
Thank you. So, before we talk about math, I want to step back. Let's talk about parents. Parents try very hard, but they still feel lost about how to support their children. And intentionally, unintentionally, they end up doing things which, in my understanding, are actually anti-education. So, putting kids in back-to-back tuitions, pushing them for higher marks, or even stretching a child's talent so much so that the child loses interest in the very thing they enjoyed. So see this a lot of times in India. How is it in Australia? So do parents face similar struggles with pressure, achievement, and confusion about what truly matters in learning?
Yeah, 100% they do. I mean, it's kind of the same the world over, isn't it? And because parents are the same the world over, they just want the best for their kids, and they are working within a system that they have also grown up with. So they have this idea of what their children need once they go to school, and unfortunately, school systems all around the world are curriculum rich but understanding poor, and it's more about content than anything else. It's about testing and outcomes, and it's very much driven around you know how our children are achieving within that very strict, very rigid framework. And so before they go to school, or even when they are in school, we provide them with what we feel is the best possible thing, and that is we do get them some tutoring, or if we want them to excel, we put them in these very strict, structured kind of places that we hope will make them better and brighter and more successful, compared, because here in Australia we've got the ATAR. I'm not sure how it is in India, but I know in particularly year 12 uh, or grade 12 classes and years across the globe, our children are assessed against a bell curve, so they rank somewhere along that curve, and so they're in competition with each other, like who is the best, who's going to be the best. But the testing is all very process driven and test driven. So we've created this system where we can only be successful if we achieve these assessments, and we achieve well for
Yeah, and that's
those,
just
and
based
and
on one
so
criteria, actually.
It's
And
what, sorry?
I'm saying it is just achieved on one criteria. It is just one criteria that is assessed, and we should be very much aware that kids are very different. I mean, they learn in a different environment. Every kid is different. They learn in a very different environment, so they cannot be assessed
Exactly.
at just one criteria.
That's
And that
exactly right. So
criteria
you
is
can
also more
imagine
about memorization, how well you're able to, ratify things, how well you're able to memorize things.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah, 100%. And you have to sit this one exam at the end of the year, and that one exam dictates what you're going to be able to achieve for the rest of your life. And
absolutely.
so many kids. I mean, I have had three children go through, you know, high school, and now are off doing what they do. And watching them go through that system, it's so hard to watch. And but I also want parents to understand that there's so much more than that. Their learning doesn't stop at 17 or
Mhm.
18. It,
Absolutely.
that's only a small fraction of what they're going to be able to achieve outside of school once they finish school. And the world doesn't test them against their peers, not in a way that school does. They don't provide them tests and assess them against a bell curve, how you rank. They test them against their communication, their problem solving, their ability to work as a team, their critical thinking, their creativity. And now, in a world of AI and technology and all of that, those sorts of things are even more critical.
Absolutely.
So it's more than just what they teach in school.
Absolutely. And I also believe that a healthy competition is with oneself. It cannot be with your peers. I mean, what you're right now, and maybe 6 months later, you can assess yourself, and not with how you're competing with your peers actually. But this competition with your peers is like it's just taking a toll on the stress level, on the emotional well-being of the kids also here in India as well. And I'm sure it's a global phenomena.
Oh, it absolutely is. Yeah.
Right. So, in your work across schools and with families, what do you think children actually need in the early years of learning that's getting sidelined today? Because I feel that KG to 5, the first 5 years or first 7 years of your life are the most crucial one. They lay the correct foundation for what you're supposed to achieve, what you aim to achieve in the later part of your life. So, what do you think
Yeah.
is the most important thing in a child's life?
Yeah, there's a reason why a lot of schools and a lot of the Scandinavian schools, Finland students don't go to school until I
Yeah.
think they're seven. And there's a really good reason for that. And it's because developmentally, up until the age of 5, students are, or children, they learn most through rich experiences. That's what they need. They need rich experiences, language, play, storytelling, interacting with their environment. Play-based learning is a huge, uh, it's a really wonderful and very impactful way that students at that age learn. And in fact, it's been shown that students up until that age, they benefit most from learning through these natural experiences with their environment. And in the opposite, whenever placed in an environment where they are learning through a bit more of a rigid structure, like through a worksheet or anything acceleration based or outcome based, it actually has the opposite effect, and it creates anxiety. It doesn't actually benefit the children in
Mm.
any positive way. So thinking about how we learn as humans, we learn through our senses and we learn through our experiences. So providing them as many experiences as possible, and then getting them to think about them, asking them what their thoughts are and what they observe, what they notice. All of those sorts of things is what a child needs up until the age of 5. And if they do develop that, there is also actually a lot of research that suggests that children who have been exposed to more experiential based sort of learning environments up until the age of 5, by the time they get to school, they're actually ahead of the curve when it comes to starting to learn more formal types of education. So that's what you want to do up until that age.
Right. And I also think that, kids are very keen observers. Uh, what parents do in front of the kids, I mean, if they want their child to read, I think it's the parents who have to start reading first, and then you can actually, and kids imitate actually. They just imitate your actions. So, how do you behave in a certain situation? That comes very natural to the kid. So, you don't have to teach things to them, it just comes very naturally to them. So, once they're able to observe a lot of things around themselves, that's how they're learning, that's how their mind develops.
Absolutely. That's why you always have to watch what you say around
Yeah,
children because they are picking things up
it's
constantly.
true.
And it's even those subtle signs like, and I know this is been talked about a lot over the last few years of not saying things like I don't know how to do that, or especially with mothers and their daughters,
Yeah,
you don't have to have the answers, and it's actually really great if you don't have the answer. What you do in that case is you say, you know what, I don't actually know what the answer to this is, but why don't we
yes,
find out together? This
yeah,
is a really good opportunity to figure
yes,
it out. And there's so much information out there these days that you can learn from. And watching parents also go through that process of learning is so important for the kids because, like you said, they're going to model their behaviors against their parents.
right. And I think that the very phrase that I hate maths, if I when I get to hear from the kids, this is what they've actually got it from their parents. Because when I talk to the parents, I mean the kids' parents, they actually have that hatred somewhere in them, and that's what the child says, that they don't like maths because it is not their subject, and that just, my heart just stops fire, because it's such a simple and such a logical and such real life subject which it is. So when I get
Yeah.
to hear it from students, it's like, why do you say that? And then you actually get to know that it's the parents wordings that they are replicating it in front of you. So yeah.
You know what, Garima? Hate comes from fear, and fear is not innate. Fear is a learned thing,
Yes, yes,
and so it comes from somewhere. And if a child hates something, you know, it's because they've learned to hate it.
yes,
They've learned to fear it. And, you know, when we present children with situations where it's scary and it's scary because the the result or the outcome places them in a place of anxiety, failure, or stress, or danger, and you don't want students or children or anyone to be placed in that environment. Well-being is the optimal thing. Like it's the most important thing for a children or for a child's development, and creating that environment, that nurturing environment, where the environment of safety. We learn best when it's safe. It's what we want to do with raising well-rounded kids, is we want to create safety for them, and we want to do that in all aspects, including mathematics. And we have to ask ourselves the question, why don't kids feel safe when they're doing mathematics?
yes, right. So you focus a lot on curiosity. So I feel that parents often miss the early signals that their child's curiosity is shutting down. So what, according to you, are the almost invisible signs or small signs that a child is losing curiosity, that or confidence, that parents can look up to? They can actually see it in their child that yes, it is not the curiosity is not there at all. What according to you it is?
Yeah, it's there are some subtle signs, but curiosity doesn't, like that collapse in curiosity. It doesn't just happen. It comes from somewhere. So the reason why we get kids sort of moving away from this whole curious side of, or this wonder about learning, is it's eroded through these messages of, we need to we need to complete this task within a time frame, or why did you do it that way? That's wrong. Or you should be finished by now. Or um, you know, why don't you understand this? It's really easy, those kinds of things. And eventually, when we get enough of those messages, kids will stop asking why,
Mm.
because when an environment stops rewarding the why, then I'm not going to continue to ask that question.
Mm.
So I'm going to continue to want to try to succeed in an outcome that I don't really want to continue to work in. And so subtle signs will be that the kids will stop asking. They'll stop asking why. They'll just try to get through that content. They'll start guessing
Mm.
things instead of questioning or reasoning through the problem. They'll avoid eye contact, or they won't put their hand up. They won't want to answer questions.
Okay.
They'll
Mm.
become overly dependent on adult confirmation, and it's all of those different things. We know, we can kind of see it. We can intuitively sense when a
Mhm.
child doesn't want to be there or doesn't want to learn.
Right.
And when you sense it, that's when you need to stop and go, okay, what am I doing in this space that is causing this reaction? I need to do something different.
Right. So I think the parents have to be more aware of their, of their kids, small activities or maybe small emotions which they're able to put forth their parents.
Yeah.
So they have to be very aware of what is happening around them. Only then they would be able to figure out those. They would be able to actually trace those small instances of the child losing their curiosity in that case.
Yeah, because if you're just doubling down, like if your child is like, I don't want to do this, or they're not reacting in a positive way to something that they're doing, or an activity, then as a parent, doubling down and forcing them to do it is exacerbating the situation. Like, if you really want to fix this, you got to take a step back, and you got to start asking yourself, and also the child, like, why do you feel like, why what are you feeling right now, and why don't you want to do this? let's
Mm.
let's talk about what is happening in this situation.
Yeah.
What would make this better for you, or what is it that you think would be more helpful
Mm.
in in your learning with this, and strip away all of the expectation from a child and just have a conversation
Yeah.
instead of giving them a problem and saying, solve this problem. Get them to ask questions,
Right.
get them to be curious about the responses. When kids are curious, you can't stop them.
Yeah.
Like, we all know, uh, you know, the why questions. Why, but why? Why is this, plant green? Oh, because of this. But why? But why? But why? It's a very common conversation we have with our kids. That's what we want to encourage. That's
Right.
the best kind of learning.
True. And I feel in India, I mean, I can talk about here, India. I don't know about Australia. But what I feel is that instead of, I mean, if the parents are able to observe those early signs in the kids that they're losing their interest in learning while going to school, I think the parents, the first thing they go is they resort to other parents. What do they think? There's a lot of society pressure also, which is here, that, that's how it is going on with other kids, and that's how it is supposed to go with your child as well. So they don't want to sit and talk to their kids. Rather, they go out and talk to other parents, and then they feel a little comforted that yes, it is happening to other kids also, and that's okay. My child is going at the right on the right path. So I think that's where we have to take a step against the society also. That yes, we have to do it for our kids. So I remember back in back some 7 8 years back, while when we started homeschooling our kids, we had a lot of raised eyebrows as to what you're doing with your child, because every child in this area in India actually is going to school, and that's where you're supposed to send your children to. But somehow we were hell-bent on not sending them to school, on not sending my daughter to school, just because we actually had to, one thing, we had to go against the society. Yes, that's how the norm is, that you're supposed to send your child to school. But that's where we had to put a foot. Why? Because we know that something is not right there, and you actually have to take that risk. Either you talk to the child, or you take that step of not sending them to school. So somewhere the parents have to be very risk taking, and not following the crowd, and not following the rat race that, yes, you're supposed to do it because you're supposed to do it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's the biggest risk because, you know, for most parents, their kids are the most important things for them. Like they want the best for them. And, you know, you wouldn't, I think somebody told me one time, like, you know, you wouldn't put your best dinner set just on the back on your back seat without a box or without, you know, containing it in some sort of way because you know it's going to fall and smash as you start driving the car. So why would you put your child in without a seatbelt kind of thing? And so because they are the most precious things, and so this not sending them to school and homeschooling them in a way that you're not like you don't know what the outcome of this is going to be. And I was talking to a girlfriend just this morning and saying just because you know what you don't want to do as a parent, it doesn't mean you know what to do, you
Right.
know, because the doing is it's the unknown. All I know is I want to do something different. And I think in those instances, regardless of what you present to your kids, as long as you're presenting them an environment where they are you're nurturing their intellect, their question asking, you're presenting them with opportunities to learn, sometimes those environments are so much more impactful than placing a student in an environment where they're just presented with the skills that they need to pass an assessment after 12 or 13 years in order to go and be successful in the world. So yeah, we don't know what might happen, but the traditional system has also not worked for hundreds of thousands of millions of kids
Right.
out there. So it's always a risk,
Right.
you know?
So I see so much talk around curriculum, and as parents here in India, I can again say about that only that everybody is worried about which school to put their child in, which board is better. Is it the IGCSE? Is it the CBSE? Or is it the state board? Or but to me, all this feels irrelevant because going ahead in today's AI world, the only curriculum is curiosity, as we've just talked about. And if your child is curious, and if the school can keep that curiosity alive for next 12 years, that is the best school according to me. What are your thoughts on it? Do you see curiosity as the only curriculum now?
Yeah, uh, curiosity is now the currency of human intelligence. That's what we need in this AI world. We don't need our kids to have more content. They need better questions. They
Yes.
need mental flexibility. They need reasoning because AI can answer any question.
Right.
Right? Knowledge is no longer scarce because it's instantly accessible. Procedures, knowing how to follow a procedure, that's no longer special. I can get the answer, in a second. And speed is no longer the marker of intelligence. So, what remains uniquely human is curiosity, is creativity. So, moving if I want to even start to imagine what 10 years from now is going to look like, I can't
Mhm.
because just the last 2 years alone, like the way AI has blown up, it's just completely changed and revolutionized the way that we work, the way that
Yes.
we learn, the way that we do anything in the world. And so, what is going to be the most valuable human skill is going to be the desire to seek new connections, ask new questions, explore. This is what makes us human, and this is what sets us apart from machines.
True.
Because AI is not it's not human. It's a giant data bank that draws information from lots of different
Everywhere. Right.
areas. We need to be teaching our students, our children, how to exist in a world where those three things, knowledge, process, speed, are no longer uh, the the successes that they used to be.
So I think your 10 years is a long time. It's like the world is changing every 2 years now.
I know. I'm thinking 10 years. It's just we're going to be like. have flying cars. Like, who the hell knows?
You
It's
can't even
I don't even
imagine
want
the
to get
kind of
into
world we'll be living in
no.
10 years now. Yeah, yeah, from now. True.
No, it's both scary and exciting at the same
Absolutely.
time, but we need to be prepared. We need to be prepared for the fact that perhaps our current education system is teaching us things, or teaching our students skills that are going to make us completely redundant in a
Absolutely.
world.
True.
So
So you recently attended the first ever Global Math Summit in Sardinia. And I remember you mentioned how energizing it was to see the community come together. So I would love the parents to hear this. What conversations or themes stood out for you at the summit? Especially around curiosity, agency, and the future of numeracy. And do you feel parents in India or Australia should pay attention to these shifts?
they absolutely should, because Sardinia was amazing in so many ways, because I think the most powerful, most impactful thing for me about Sardinia was the coming together of like-minded
Hmm.
maths educators, so mathematicians, teachers, lecturers, people who from primary to secondary to tertiary, all resonating with the same message of, we want mathematics to become so much more than what it is. We want to go back to that almost Renaissance era where mathematics is joyful and creative and interesting, and can be used to open our minds rather than create fear and anxiety. And there were so many things that were discussed about the human connections, the bridging of cultures, and the gaps between mathematics. Like, it was just such a beautiful sort of coming together of people, and it will continue, I think, in 2027. I know Sunil Singh, who was one of
Hmm.
the founders, and also Amy Aldnower was also one of the co-founders. They are planning something in 2027 called, they're just calling it a math retreat this time. And the whole idea about it is, rather than focusing on mathematics as a subject to be studied and to be passed, we're focusing on it as a subject of human flourishing, like uh, uh, not Andrew. Oh my God, what's his name? Francis Sue's book. Mathematics for Human Flourishing, and it's kind of what it's about. It's such a powerful subject that connects. It sort of transcends cultures and genders and everything like that. And I talk about it as a universal language because it actually does those things. And once you connect with it, it's just so beautiful and so powerful. And I have my own backstory to maths education, maths learning, and it. I know it's possible, and that's a lot of that's kind of what the overlying and underlying messages of that summit were about.
So we've just talked about, the fear actually travels from the fear of the subject, maths. It actually travels from the parents to the kids. Another pattern I see among parents is the belief that, some children are naturally math kids and others aren't. So from your experience, what are the biggest myths around who is good at math, and how do these myths quietly harm children?
Oh boy, do I have experiences. So, and I was saying before, like, fear is it's a learned emotion. And, I'm just going to begin by telling you my own story with respect to this. So, when I was younger, I was very, well, in quotation mark, bad at maths, right? So, I struggled with mental computation and arithmetic. Like, I grew up with undiagnosed ADHD. I didn't understand why I struggled in those areas. So from a very young age, I was labeled as bad at maths. And, I grew up in the 80s, so timed tests and all of that sort of process based stuff. I just didn't, it just didn't click with me. And I was a very, very big on the why. I needed to understand why. Like if you're telling me that when I add two fractions, I have to, have a comment.
Quickly
I want
also.
to know why. I do not understand why I have to do something just because I have to do it. So nobody could explain it. And I was constantly getting into trouble, being like, just stop asking so many questions. Just do it. Right? It's just the rules. And, I'm not a big rule follower, so it never sat with me. And so I was bad at maths. I failed repeatedly, continuously, all throughout high school and into university, believe it or not, as I ended up getting a degree in physics. And it's funny because people are like, how do you have a degree in physics and you're bad at maths? And I tell them, because in the end, I realized that in order for me to pass physics, I had to just hack maths. I didn't understand it. I just learned the processes. So I knew how to solve the problems. And it wasn't until I graduated and became my own person as an adult, and I started diving more into it. I went into education and learned a little bit more about mathematics in my own way,
Yeah.
that I I started understanding it, So I went from being a complete maths failure to now I love it, and I can, give me a problem and I'll solve it, not
Mm.
because I understand the process, but because I really want to solve it. So there's all of these myths about who's good at maths and who's bad. It's all rubbish. There is no such thing as a maths person. There is no such thing as a maths brain. Um, Neuroscience disproves it. Anecdotal evidence disproves it, and it's about that exposure, those early conversations, those early experiences with mathematics, that makes people think that they're not good at it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like what we were talking about before with, you know, kids can't do it quick enough, or, you know, they get the answers wrong. And so suddenly they think they're bad at it,
Yeah.
but it's all rubbish. So don't have the conversations with them. Don't, I would hope that nobody ever overhears or gets told by somebody that they're just not a maths person or they're bad at maths, because that stuff sticks. And also, as parents, please don't say that I'm not a maths person. I was always bad at maths, so I don't know. Just remove that completely from your dialogue, and it's more about, you know what, I don't really understand this, I don't know what the answer is to this, but I'm sure we can figure it out. Have that growth mindset, have an open mind. Just Yeah, it's not that
True.
deep. you know
So you bring such a beautiful math into art lens, and I bring the thinking lens, thinking sense making lens. So if we had to combine both, what does joyful, rigorous math actually look like at home? Could you share an example?
Yeah, again, it comes back to that curiosity and creativity, and it's a blending of that, conceptual and creative. So it's talking about, like, it's providing opportunities for kids, because if you think about art, people do art because they enjoy it. It's very rare that people, or even not even, I'm not even talking about painting, I'm talking about creative endeavors, like perhaps writing or poetry or dance or music, or all of those creative
Any
kind
kind
of,
of expression, actually.
yeah, any kind of, it becomes implicit, a part of them. And this is what we can also do with mathematics, because you you think about both of those aspects. It's Maths is just about patterns. It's
True.
not about numbers and number crunching. You think about fractals, you think about, um, geometry,
Yeah.
design, even in design, like perspective and, ratio, and all of those different things. Music is all about fractions.
Right.
We implicitly, and, uh, we do mathematics, and we see and we observe those things every single day. And when you when you combine those two things in that kind of joyful way, it adds another level of a human experience.
True.
You know what I mean? Because curiosity and creativity, they kind of abound in the prefrontal cortex, that processing part of our brain, and it allows us to, and the processing part of our brain, that's where, you know, reasoning and processing and all of those sorts of things happen, which is what a lot of, you know, involves a lot of maths. And so when you've combined those things, then everything that you learn becomes a lot more intrinsic. You know what I mean? You can remember them a lot more. You can understand them a lot more. You don't have to then commit it to memory because you understand it.
Yes.
And that's what creativity does and curiosity does. So
Right.
it's so much more effective
True.
than.
And I think what I always tell my students also that, so they are always ask me ki, what is this, where are we using it actually, because this is one question which, you know, students ask in the class, where are we using it in real life. So I think maths is not just about numeracy, it's more about how you're able to think through. So it gives you that power of thinking through. You may not be able to solve the question right away, but it gives you the power to think. So and that has to be applied at every phase of life, that you're able to think through situations. Even if you have a problem in front of you, it may not be mathematical, but in general also, if you have if you have that kind of if you have any problem in front of you, you need to think through that problem, how to get through that
Yeah.
problem. That is what the power of mathematics really is. It gives you that logical bent of mind, it gives you that power to think and problem solve it. So this is to be achieved in a bigger sense from maths actually.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It teaches you to problem solve. It teaches you to think critically. It teaches you to reason. It teaches you to apply rational thinking. And
Absolutely.
we don't only do those in maths, we do those in our relationships. We do
Absolutely.
those when we go down to the store and think about, you know, what the best value for whatever it is. Like, it doesn't even have to be anything that's number based. Every single aspect of our life requires solving some sort of a problem.
Absolutely.
And and we talk about critical thinking these days. This is where AI then again becomes a problem. So I want people to imagine a scenario where, you know, when Google, let's look at the internet, the Google, when the Google came, you know, became popular, and everybody was, you know, we've got a search engine now where we can type in a question and we get like
Multiple.
hundreds of thousands
Yeah.
of options for websites that we can go on, and we can read, and we can pick and choose which parts we want to focus on, or what resonates with us. Whereas with AI, and we don't even have control over this anymore, because when you go onto Google, the first, if you ask a question, you know, Gemini answers it for you. So it pulls its own, you know, from
Right.
its own websites, like the top, whatever it is. I don't know how it works, but it does. We've all experienced it. When you think about it, if I put a question into Google before AI, and then I put a question into ChatGPT or Gemini, and it spits out a response, and the other one spits out a response, I've got maybe 100,000 options that I can choose from. But in AI, I've only got the option that it gives me.
Yes.
And so we're starting to become conditioned to only the answer that we get. So we're actually losing our ability to think critically.
Absolutely.
When we're presented with various different situations, we get a choice. We go, okay, well, I'm reading this and I'm reading this and I'm reading this. What makes more sense to me?
Yes.
And how can I determine which one is the best response? Versus, I'm only getting this one response now, so I no longer have to think about
Correct. True.
what the answer is. Do you know what I'm trying to say? And And when we're doing the same in maths. Like, we're given the students a problem and there's only one answer, so they're doing all of these questions from a textbook or from a test or whatever it is that they're doing, and it's a closed question. They put they solve it, they get an answer, they solve it, they get an answer. Where's the critical thinking?
Yeah.
The critical thinking is so important. It's one of the skills that stop you from getting fooled by a catfisher,
Mm.
people who are trying to scam you for money. If you can't think critically through a situation, you're in trouble.
Yeah, true. So I personally believe that kids should be restricted till the age, till a certain age to actually use
Yes,
AI. But then there is no, you can't do it actually because it's readily available. You can't let the kids not do it actually.
that's right.
Yeah.
What we need to do is we need to be teaching students how to use
Yes.
AI. Like,
Yes.
we can't stop them
Yeah, yeah, we can.
from doing it, but we need to teach them how to use it effectively. So
True.
it's like a calculator. We use the calculator to maybe check our understanding at some
Yes.
point, or for those
Complex.
yeah, where we just want to do a quick, we already know how to do this, so I'm just going to use a calculator. But what we need to do is we need to be starting to teach our students in the classroom how to use AI for the fundamental, like the basic tasks, and then how to question the output that the AI gives us, and how we can then take that and embed it into our own critical thinking and reasoning through it by asking it questions and by doing some further digging. Because we've heard of those situations where people just, it's kids, they're going to do things without thinking them through, because
Yes.
their brains haven't developed to that point. I mean, some adults brains haven't developed to that point. That's another story. But do you know what I mean? So we that's what we need to be doing. We need to be teaching our kids how to do that, not
Absolutely. Not,
stopping them from using it.
not doing it right. So most of the parents, especially in India, they often send their children for math tuitions outside of school. But what I feel is that math, if done correctly at home in early ages, probably parents spending just 10 to 15 minutes each day with a child having everyday conversations around math. So none of this is required. The tuitions and everything is not required because if we can help children visualize the situation and verbalize it correctly, most of the math problems get solved. So, what is your take on this? And what is what in your understanding are 3 to 4 simple ways parents can build conceptual understanding without sending children for math tuitions? No worksheets, no textbooks, just daily life thing.
That's a great question. Number one is conversations,
Mhm.
conversations and
I totally agree.
storytelling.
Yes,
Uh, y- you know, Take them outside. Go outside at night on a clear night and have a look at the stars, and ask them what they think. What are they thinking about that? You know, Even something simple like, have a look at the stars. Is there anything that you're wondering about those stars?
true.
And how many stars do you think there are in the sky? And it's about, and they'll come up with an insanely ridiculous number. Like,
True.
I think there are 150, because to them that's a really big number. But
That's, I think,
talk
estimation. Thinking
estimation.
estimation. Yes.
Exactly. Estimation is one of the most important things that we can teach our students, our children, because out in the real world, if you think about it, the majority of the maths that we do out in the real world is all estimation. It's about 85% of the stuff we do is estimation. We don't do, how long is this? Oh, it's approximately, I'd say it's around 2 meters. That's all I need to know. It's around 2 meters. How much is that? Oh, it's about $25. So we're estimating.
Even the Google
And
Maps tell you the estimated time of arrival. It never tells you the exact time of arrival.
Exactly. So, estimation. There's a great website called Esti Mysteries, where it's got a picture of a glass, let's say, and they've got a whole bunch of like gummy worms in there, and it gets you to estimate how many you think is in there,
Yes.
and then it asks you different questions. The number is between this and this, and and then they get, they get the next response. It's between this and this. So, these fun games of maths games, and it doesn't have to be, boring maths games.
Yes.
We're talking about just simple conversations, math before bed. Like, I think the one thing, if I could tell parents, the one thing to focus on for their their preschool students is supertising. And I don't think
True.
many parents know what
And in
supertising
fact,
is. I didn't
supervising
know
is
what.
something which is not even there in the curriculum if you talk about it.
Yes,
It's just there
and
for the
as
sake of a moment and then it's just gone.
that's right, and people don't actually understand or recognize how critical supervising is for future development, number development. And as a high school teacher, I hadn't even heard of it until I started working with primary. So supervising, for those who don't know, is the ability to recognize quantities without counting it, and it's actually an evolutionary human skill. It's an innate skill in humans,
It's
because
even
if you
there
think
in
about it,
animals. I mean, if
it is
there's an example of
it is
crows, which is there.
right, which is so fascinating. Like, even animals know how to supervise.
Yes.
It is such a primal skill in us, because if we think about it, back to the cave, when we were hunters and gatherers, we would need to recognize quantities because A, survival, and B, danger. So I'm looking over here and I know that there are, three things, and I can recognize that there is a quantity of three, because I think our innate supervising, we can supervise quantities of three without counting. That is
True.
a skill that is recognized in students as young as like
Right.
two or three, or four. So up till three, and then anything above five is like, we know that there's many of them, and a lot of Indigenous communities still operate in that kind of way. There's one, two, three, up to five, and then there's many, because we don't need to recognize quantities above five for any other reason.
And maybe
So
they form groups also. So it's like 5 and 4 that, that
yes,
also, there are different patterns in supervising actually.
exactly. So
Hmm.
as a parent, what I would do is, even if you're in the kitchen and you're cooking, and you've got on a plate, you've got like cucumbers and tomatoes. So line them up in groups. When they're young, place them in a group on a plate, like you got 3 tomatoes and 2 cucumbers,
Right.
and ask the students how much they are, very quickly, without counting.
Uh,
And that ability to recognize is so important, because they'll start to recognize quantities up to three, and then you start to introduce quantities up to five in their partitions. So then you start to learn part whole. So anything above five, they'll start to go, okay, well, I know this is a group of five and this is a group of two. So together I now have seven. So it leads into their addition and into their counting
right.
of wholes. And so that skill of supervising, that is a big one. Get them to anything. Let's look at the wall. How many do you think there are? So those sorts of things. The third one is, so what did we talk about? We talked about supervising. We talked about storytelling,
Yes. Conversation
and then there are games.
games.
So games, any sort of games, because games are about strategy. They're about thinking through, dice games,
Yes.
counting cards. Kids don't see cards anymore, like physical cards. I've
Yeah.
had students in high school come in, and they've never played a card game,
Yes.
and so just simple things. So games, uh, quantities, talking about numbers, and storytelling. That's what I'll
I
say
think
to
parents should
parents.
take note of this, that they can do a lot of things with their kids at home without
Yeah,
any,
with
and it's more of a fun time with them actually. It's more of spending
yeah,
time with them and, bringing those elements of mathematical thinking in the games itself. And I
yeah,
call it
because
math over moment, the mom thing, math over moments.
oh, I love that. That's amazing, because it's
Yeah.
just fun. Like, we whenever we're enjoying ourselves, that's when, because they talk about, and I want to get like a little bit neurosciencey for this part, but so when we think about our stress response, happens in our amygdala. So our amygdala is responsible for our stress response, and the amygdala is very closely associated with our hippocampus, which is where our memory is are
Mm.
stored. And then you've got the creativity and curiosity are in our prefrontal cortex. So a lot of the anxiety that we develop when we're learning is committed to memory as anxiety, and this is where the fear and the stress and the hatred of the subject comes from. So you don't want to create memories of maths that is associated with fear
Fear,
or
hatred.
stress, or
Yeah.
so when we create memories of mathematics that are creative and are fun and are about
Happy
curiosity,
memories about maths.
happy memories, that's what we want to do. That's what we want to start creating in our kids.
Right, right. So, Nadia, I ask this to every guest. If you had 5 minutes with every parent in the world, what would you tell them about learning, childhood, and the future?
Okay, what I would say is that don't worry about where your child is at this stage in their life. It is not a race. Um, School is one aspect of their life. You want to nurture their their interest in learning. You want to create a love of learning in your children. You don't want them to hate learning. We've got schools that make them do that. And I'm not anti schools, but I know that a lot of, I mean, how many kids do we know love going to school?
Absolutely.
So, what you want to do is provide an environment where it is okay to fail, because failure is one of the most powerful learning
Yeah, absolutely.
responses that we can have. It is okay to fail. It is natural to fail. It's part of how we grow and develop. So making failure not a bad thing, not a scary thing,
Right.
making it a learning experience. Like, what can we learn from this situation? Making struggle a really important part of their learning. Like, we're supposed to be struggling when we're learning. If we're not struggling when we're learning,
Then
we're
we
not
can
learning the
learn.
right things. We're not
Absolutely.
learning in the right ways. It's part of how our brain develops. We need that struggle, but we also need the struggle to be done in healthy, positive ways. So it's just about modeling, creating a safe, nurturing environment for your children, communication, and just remembering that the learning's not going to stop at the end of grade 12, and the
Right.
skills that they're going to take out into the real world are so different from the skills that are expected
True.
in school. So you have to remember that.
Right.
That's what I would say.
Thank you so much, Nadia. This conversation with you reminded me of something simple but very profound. That children, they don't need perfection, they need the presence. They don't need any kind of pressure, but they need curiosity. And they don't need any endless resources, which comes in the form of worksheets or, any other tests. They need adults who truly see them. So today you brought so much clarity, warmth, and wisdom to this conversation. From curiosity in the early years to the myths around who's good at math and who's fearing it, to the insights you shared from the Global Math Summit. You've given every parent listening a new lens to look through. And for all the parents who are tuning into this, I hope you walk away today with relief, with hope, and with a reminder that learning is not a race. It's a relationship between your child and the world. So, between curiosity and wonder, between thinking and joy. So, if you found this conversation meaningful, do share it with another parent who might need to hear it today. And Nadia, thank you for your generosity, your global perspective, and your heart for children. It's been such a pleasure having you on the podcast. So, all of you can also follow the Matt Talks on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. And if you found this valuable, leave us a review or drop a comment. It helps us reach more families who care about real learning. Until next time, Stay curious, stay kind, and keep learning alongside you. Thank you so much, everyone.